This is the Concealed Carry Podcast, Season 7, Episode 20. And welcome to the Concealed Carry Podcast, part of the concealedcarry.com network of podcasts, brought to you by Silencer Shop. Today is Wednesday, December 14th, 2022, as of the recording of this episode, and I am your host, Riley Bowman. And I'm joined today by our producer and co-host, Matthew Maruster.
Happy to be here again with you, man, and to the people who are listening.
Yeah, and for those viewing, you'll note that Matthew has recently trimmed his hair in an effort to look more like me.
It's a company policy now, just so you guys know. Jacob's making everyone shave their heads. So, no, I'm kidding.
Well, I should grow out the beard, and then you and I could be twinners.
I need to grow about 1.5 feet.
Yeah, that's
twins,
true. Or I could shrink.
That could, yeah.
Maybe. Okay. Anyway, welcome to the show, folks. Today's episode is our news and gear reviews episode. So we've got a bunch of news stories to share with you. And also later on, we will share with you a couple of product reviews as well. So we look forward to that. And stay tuned. Later in the episode will be this spicy news article, if you will. We'll talk about this news story that was the inspiration behind today's episode title, Smith & Wesson's Big Mistake. What is that mistake? Well, you'll want to find out, so stick around. First, today's episode sponsored by Silencer Shop. SilencerShop.com is the place to find them. I was so excited just a week or two or so ago. I picked up my second suppressor that I bought from and used Silencer Shop's services to acquire. So, guys, let me tell you, if you think, and I think you should, if you are interested in getting a suppressor or getting another suppressor, maybe you've already got several. But I'll tell you what, once you buy one, it's kind of hard to stop there because you get one for one gun, you go, well, man, it sure be nice to have one for that gun or that caliber or this thing or that thing. Guys, I strongly encourage you to check out Silencer Shop and their services. Go to silencershop.com today. See the full lineup of products on their website. They make it super easy to purchase, and there's free shipping and free shipping and transfers and everything associated with transferring it from them to your chosen local dealer, where you will then go in and finish the process for applying for the actual. It makes no sense to do anything other than the E-Form 4. Okay, so that's the way you want to go. So file your E-Form 4, get into your local Silencer Shop kiosk dealer or dealer that has one of their kiosks. That's what I'd recommend. Do your fingerprints, do all that, and get that ball rolling. All right. And I just saw a week or so ago, they had yet another special where you bought a certain suppressor. I can't remember which ones it was that they were doing the special on at that time, but if you bought any number of these particular brands of suppressors, you got a free tax stamp, meaning that Silencer Shop was covering your $200 tax stamp fee. So, guys, silencershop.com, we appreciate their support of the podcast for being our title sponsor and making what we do here possible. Also, CCW Safe is our other sponsor of today's episode. CCW Safe, we've been members of for a number of years now. CCW Safe also sponsors. They are our presenting sponsor of the Guardian Conference, which we'll be having again in 2023, September of 2023, next year. And they are the best folks, I believe, in the industry that provide a self-defense coverage program, meaning that if you ever have to use your gun in self-defense, give them a call. All right. In fact, that should be besides a 911 call, if that's what you got to do. All right. If somebody else can make that call for you, that's okay too. But besides a 911 call CCW Safe first and make sure you get them rolling. Their emergency response team will come to you potentially, or will especially talk to you over the phone, guide you through the process, the aftermath of dealing with a self-defense incident. Sign up today at ccwsafe.com. Please use the code CCPodcast to save 10%, or consider joining Guardian Nation, our membership program, which also entitles you to a 20% discount at CCW Safe. That coupon or discount code is available in the Guardian Nation members dashboard area. ccwsafe.com again for the best self-defense coverage in the industry, in my opinion. And we again appreciate them for their support of the podcast and everything we do here. And welcome to those of you joining us live, Scott and Connor and others watching and viewing us today. And those of you that aren't viewing or listening to the podcast after the fact, we appreciate you as well. Let's get into our news episode now at this time. We're talking about the news. We got a bunch of stories for you. The first one we're going to try to explain as best as we can. Matthew, why don't you just quickly summarize for folks what the law was that was passed in Oregon, and then I'll try to tag team with you and explain the current lawsuits that are going on there.
Yeah, so basically, if you recall, ballot measure 114 in Oregon was this comprehensive gun control bill, and it did a bunch of things. Magazine capacity limit laws, a license just in order to purchase a firearm. All kinds of different stuff was jammed into this thing. So it passed. It passed by a very thin margin. So immediately, because this was after the Bruin case, right? So this was something that was on everybody's radar as this can't possibly pass, right? It did. And immediately there were lawsuits challenging every different aspect of this law. And so now there are many different cases that are going on with this, similar to the New York law, but different restraining orders on freezes on different parts of the law. And we're just sorting out kind of what's coming back as far as what's been stayed and what's been denied and all kinds of stuff. So I'll hand it over to you. You have a good idea of what's going on with all these different cases as much as we can, right?
Yeah. So yeah, again, just to build off of what you just were explaining, I mean, keep in mind, guys, that the law is going to require, I mean, it's not like it's been overturned yet, but we certainly hope that will be the case. But it's going to require a purchase or a permit to purchase a firearm, right? But to get that permit, you'd have to take a training class. So a mandatory training requirement, which was not very specific as to what that would entail or require. But you got to take a class just to get a permit, just to buy a gun. Right? We're not talking about a permit to get a concealed carry permit or license. We're talking about a permit to buy a gun. Okay. Now, that some people would be like, well, that's similar to the firearm owner's identification card in like Illinois. Yeah, but theirs is, and I'm not saying that's okay either. Like that should not be a requirement either. But it's a lot less stringent in Illinois to get a FOID card than it is to get this permit in Oregon. Okay. So mandatory training class, you'd have to get fingerprinted, turn in passport pictures, pass a background check, pay a fee. You'd have to renew that permit to purchase every 5 years. Okay. This wouldn't replace the need to do a background check when you go to a gun shop to buy a gun. And there was something too about how, like, to get a gun, you had to have the permit, but to get the permit, you'd have to have a gun to take the training class that you would need. So you would have to, I guess, rent a gun, I presume, to even take the training required to then buy the gun that you're basically training for. And then the other thing was that gun shops would have to give all records of transfers to the Oregon State Police. Okay. So that's creating a state level firearms registry. Okay. Which again, that's not entirely unique in that, somewhere like Hawaii or California have similar registries. Okay. Then it also banned magazines with greater of 10 round capacity. And of course that's problematic as well. Okay. So there's just keep in mind there's all those different components: a training component, a permit to purchase component, a firearm registry component, a magazine capacity ban. So Gun Owners of America, along with Gun Owners Foundation and 2 Oregon residents, filed a suit, filed a temporary restraining order against ballot measure 114, specifically going after the permit to purchase requirement, claiming that it violated Oregon state constitution. Okay, they were successful in obtaining a temporary restraining order. And this is critical, right? Because basically we have that's the process here. Obtain a TRO to buy time, because this law, by the way, after only being passed by ballot measure barely more than a month ago, was set to take place, set to go into effect 1 month later, 30 days later, which is insane. There's almost nothing that we pass law-wise, like even your most innocuous, most basic, most simple laws. Usually when a legislature passes them, for instance, they usually won't put them into effect until, like, let's say it gets passed in January or February or March. It may not go into effect till July or August or September, okay, or even the following year. So they passed this ballot measure, and that's just how terribly this whole thing was worded, right, and planned, like terrible planning on their part. But of course, the people and the organizations behind passing this ballot measure don't give a crap. So 30 days later, expected to have this go into effect, which would have been December 8th. But Gun Owners of America's their lawsuit, they're filing for a temporary restraining order, was granted, because otherwise the law would have had to have kicked in on December 8th, right? So now there's a little bit of time while we go to the next the next thing, which there's arguments being going to be presented in court, making a stronger case, making the case for why the certain aspects of this law should be overturned. Now, realize, folks, that people think, well, why can't we just get the whole thing overturned? And that would be ideal. But you have the best success in going through the court system in attacking specific parts and pieces of the law, right? And that's why you sometimes will see, say, like the New York Bruin decision, or the Heller decision, or even the McDonald decision. Those rulings actually are fairly narrow in certain aspects, right? Because they were about specific parts or pieces of laws that were passed or infringements that occurred. And so Gun Owners of America is going after one aspect of this ballot measure, okay, of this state law. What I'm also wanting to explain, this is what Matthew is referring to, right? Why don't you explain the other stuff? There's really, to my knowledge, 4, and there could be others, 4 lawsuits that have been filed, or temporary restraining orders that have been filed against the state of Oregon. That's just one of them, the Gun Owners of America one. Firearms Policy Coalition is involved in 2 other filings. One that involves a man by the name of Mark Fitz. It's known as the Fitz versus Rosenblum. Rosenblum's the state attorney general in Oregon, in case you're wondering. Fitz versus Rosenblum involves a man by the name of Mark Fitz. Gray Guns, whom I must state is a sponsor of mine as a competitive shooter. It's the same Gray Guns that many of you are familiar with, that does customization work on P320s and HK pistols and things like that. SIG pistols and HK pistols. A company known as G4 Archery and Second Amendment Foundation are all involved in that filing, and they're specifically going after the large capacity magazine ban. Okay, and then you have another filing that's also backed by Firearms Policy Coalition, which is as a party versus Rosenblum, which is going after Oregon's cannot issue gun permit law. Okay. And I'm not going to go into too much more detail here because I'm taking plenty of time. But then there's a 4th filing for a temporary restraining order, which is backed by the NRA as well as the National Shooting Sports Foundation. And that one is known as Iyer versus Rosenblum. Okay. And that one is going also, they're filing against the permit to purchase requirement as well. So some of these have been granted temporary restraining orders and others have not been quite as successful just yet, or some are still in process. So point is, again, we could take a lot of time. We don't have necessarily a lot of time here today because we have a lot of other news to cover. But I wanted to explain that there's these 4 different suits that are going on, so that you kind of are prepared, because there's a lot of activity there, and there's going to be a lot of news coming in the coming weeks and months, and it may get confusing because you may hear about, well, this thing got granted and that thing did not. This law got temporarily suspended and that one did not, and it may be confusing because some of these are originating in county courts and district courts, and they're coming from different places, okay, and going after different components of the law. And obviously the hope is that all of those would eventually be successful in getting this ballot measure overturned, but perhaps maybe not all of them will be successful. So stay tuned for that. We'll try to follow this. I need to actually dig a little bit deeper and make sure I get a little bit firmer grasp of everything that is going on. And I just haven't had time to read about everything. And the problem here is we have all these different lawsuits taking place, and it makes it hard to track and stay on top of all of that. In the midst of everything else
Right.
that we have going on. But I'm going to try to do a little bit more reading up on that. But just know that those are the different cases that I'm aware of currently, and kind of some of the different pieces of the ballot measure that those cases are going after. The last thing I saw was that the magazine capacity portion, which is the Gray Guns Firearms Policy Coalition suit, was not quite yet successful. In other words, the court denied the motion, it says here, for a temporary restraining order on the ban of magazines that hold more than 10 rounds. But they did put in place that temporary restraining order on the permit to purchase law, recognizing that the state system, is not going to be ready. There's county sheriffs that are saying, there's even a county sheriff that's involved in one of these lawsuits as well, saying that it's going to take months for people just to buy a single gun. With the way, like if this goes forward and they have to implement this system, it's going to be at least months, many months, just for someone to buy a gun, because not everything's in place. And so they're really figuring it out as they go. I don't know if I think there's a lot of people in Oregon that were a bit caught off guard by the fact that this ballot measure did in fact pass. It's severely unfortunate. It's terrible that barely a majority, a slim margin of a majority of Oregonians didn't understand how bad this law is and the ramifications of this law, and would actually, buy the falsehoods, by that, the belief that somehow this ballot measure would make their state and their community safer, which obviously we know that's far from the case. But unfortunately, that's what happened, and now everybody is going to have to be playing some catch up as far as getting those things in place in order to comply with the law. But then also we're trying to attack this with a full court press from all these different organizations. And by the way, kudos to Gun Owners of America, Firearms Policy Coalition, the NRA, National Shooting Sports Foundation, Second Amendment Foundation, all being right there at the ready, with funds, with the ability to go after and fight these legal cases, because they're going to cost a lot of money. They're going to cost the state of Oregon a lot of money too, which I'm not shedding any tears about. But yeah, it's good to see these organizations. And by the way, you should support any or all of these organizations as you see fit. I'm particularly partial to Firearms Policy Coalition. I truly believe in the work that they do. They do fantastic work and are just an absolute awesome organization in as far as their approach, mostly because they don't get particularly involved in partisan politics. They stay very focused on the issues surrounding the Second Amendment and fighting cases that are violating the Second Amendment, and they do a great job in that way. Some of the other organizations also do good work as far as in the legal court systems, but also get a little bit more partisan, and I'm not as keen about some of that. But anyway, So support these organizations because they're going to need our help as well, funding wise, I think, just to be able to tackle all these cases. So sorry, I went on for a long time, but there's a lot going on there, and it's also somewhat complicated just trying to keep up to speed on all the different people and organizations involved in these suits.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, I'll shut up now. So, Matthew, tell us about. Here's some gun news, folks.
Yeah.
A recent new gun release from Ruger, and Matthew will tell us about it.
Okay, so after all that, this is going to be a flop. Now it's Ruger released the Ruger Security 380. So if you imagine Ruger, this is basically Ruger's take, in my opinion, Ruger's take on like a Shield Easy. It's Glock 43-ish in size, right? It's a compact. It's not a super micro compact. It's obviously chambered in 380. It's 10 round, 10 plus 1 and 15 plus 1 capacity. So that's good. It seems like it has some slide serrations and some cuts in the slide, some decent sights. The main thing is it has a light racking with a reduced recoil spring, so you can rack it a little bit easier. And the size coupled with a 380 cartridge probably means that the recoil impulse will be a little diminished there. It's a little much better than shooting a micro compact 380. Yeah, nothing too crazy. Yeah, I know it's got a manual safety on it. I don't know. I'm not huge on Ruger handguns, but if you like a 380 and you have trouble racking the slide, Shield Easy or something like this might be something you're looking for. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, it's a 380. So it doesn't get me super excited. I don't particularly have a need for this gun, but somebody, like you just said, somebody out there might find value in this. As long as it's well made and the quality is there, yeah, I don't see a problem. But that, quality with Ruger has been hit or miss here and there over the years. I have to look at it though. I'm looking at the images of it right now, and immediately, where's my mind go? Well, since we now, meaning concealedcarry.com owns a holster company, I immediately know that the questions will be coming in. Do you all make a holster for the Ruger Security 380? And first of all, you should know we don't really make a whole lot of holsters for any Rugers, at least as of right now. That could always change, but it's just not something that we're set up to make. So I think the one that we do make a holster for is the LC9, I think. But I start looking at it from that angle as, oh, great, another gun. And I hope that this gun will fit the same, if we were making, say, holsters for the Ruger Security 9, I would hope that the Security 380 is similar enough to fit into the same holster, because that makes a holster maker's life so much easier. But I also know, looking at you, Sig Sauer, and let's see, what's the other one I was thinking of recently? Sig is definitely on my naughty list right now as far as the P365, P365 XL, and then the X Macro, which is totally different from those others. Anyway, such is the life of making holsters. Mark Cook says, you don't need a permit anywhere in America, people. The Second Amendment, the Dick Act, prevents any government from taking any type of gun from its citizens. You all spend way too much time on talking points that have no logical outcome that doesn't align with our Constitution, period. Well, Mark, that's why we have a court. The government is split up into 3 branches, right? I feel like I'm going back to high school government class. And the judicial branch is the one where we bring cases to the judiciary and say this is unconstitutional. And if we're actually going to be constitutional, that's actually how we're supposed to operate when we find fault with problems with constitutional infringements. or we elect people that pass the right laws.
Yeah.
And that's how it works. Or and you're welcome to, disregard law, Mark, and live your life in the way you want to, and that works great until you get caught. And then, we'll be reading about you in the news. But I fully like my I, I I'm like, yeah, I agree. Like, I think so many of these laws are unconstitutional, of course. But what do we do about that? Well, anyway, let's go now, Matthew. Give us an update here on, because you wrote this article, so that's why I'm turning it to you, on concealed carry, newyork.concealedcarry.com. New York gun law loses in court again.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the Bruin. You're referencing the Bruin ruling here, but tell us about what's going on in New York and what did they lose again, I guess.
Yeah, so the Bruin case, in response to the Bruin case, which basically knocked down New York's proper cause requirement for issuing permits, requiring somebody to have proper cause before they would issue a permit. The state passed the CCIA, the Concealed Carry Improvement Act, and that was the New York law that had all the restrictions similar to what we were talking about in Oregon, right? It put massive restrictions on where you could carry firearms and all kinds of different things. So similar to what happened in Oregon, there were different cases. In this latest one, the judge issued a restraining order, and this one is Antonyk, 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 I don't know, versus
Antonyk.
Hochul. Yeah,
That's what I'd say.
versus
Yeah.
Hochul, and
Which is the governor.
right, Hochul is the governor.
Mhm.
And that case has to do with different carry zones. They call them sensitive areas, and basically everything became a sensitive area. And so that challenged that part. There was a restraining order issued or sustained in that part. Antonyk versus Hochul. Then there's Hardaway versus Negrelli, and that was October 22nd. And this U.S. District Judge Sinatra, I just thought I'd throw that out there. It's a cool name. But he issued a restraining order against the portion of the law that had to do that banned concealed carry in churches, flat out. And even the leader of that congregation, that church, they didn't even have a say in it. So this case, Hardaway, it was joined by a couple other religious entities and people. And so that's Hardaway versus Negrelli. That was strike two. That was, sustained, and the restraining order issued. So that's strike two. Strike three was Christian versus Negrelli. And this had to do with banning concealed carry on certain private property, where the owner didn't even have the right, similar to the church, didn't have the right to say, yeah, well, I want to allow concealed carry. That took that away. So, so the three strikes, that was the third one. And so right now what's going on in New York is this law that came, and even Hochul even said that it was in response to Bruin, that it was a direct result of the ruling, Supreme Court ruling, that they passed this super fast, and it's being knocked down left and right. So we'll have to just keep following these cases, and they're not they haven't concluded. Just because there's a temporary restraining order issue doesn't mean that the law is going to go away. It's just not being enforced right now, and so we just have to stay tuned to this stuff.
Yeah. Yep. So we're seeing something pretty similar in New York State as kind of what we're starting to see in Oregon. Is thanks to the Bruin decision, New York was forced to institute policy that brought things more in line with the Constitution, with the Second Amendment, as far as allowing people to carry firearms or conceal firearms. And their rush to pass laws to deal with that in their typical New York City fashion, because as we know, New York State, much like other similar states, are ruled by their major metropolitan area or areas. Anyway, it's very satisfying to see how these things keep getting pushed back and turned around because of because we got to abide by the Constitution, and the Bruin decision is a massively important decision in this regard. So very, very awesome to hear, very awesome to see. Again, we'll see how maybe even Bruin plays into things going on in Oregon. There's certainly some potential for that, as well as the Heller decision, the McDonald decision, and others. Very, very important stuff. How did confidential gun permit data get leaked is the next story on vcstar.com. I'm just going to try to summarize this as best I can. But, we've talked a little bit about, the state of California's firearm registration scheme, if you will, and their permitting scheme and everything there. And we've talked about how people's private information got leaked, in that case, dealing with concealed carry permits. Or was that registered? I might be getting them mixed up. Keep me straight, Matthew, here, because again, there's so much.
Yeah, this has to do with the permits.
Okay, so what was the
permits.
Okay, all right. I started second guessing myself, thinking about all these other things going on. But it says here, California Attorney General Rob Bonta and the state's gun owners have obviously been already warring over the state's very tight gun control laws. Okay, so back when the Bruin decision was issued, right? Again, talking about the impact that could have. Well, we're looking at states, yes, you, California, and yes, you, Hawaii, by the way. That could have been a news story in today's episode, Matthew, that folks in Hawaii are actually getting, we think. Yeah. I just saw just recently a post from a friend in Hawaii about how they're finally able to get permits issued in Hawaii to carry concealed, which is a miracle. But because of the Bruin decision, because of the impact that's having there over in a state where getting a permit was dang near impossible. And in California is an interesting state because you have a state where they left it to the specific counties and their sheriffs and all that to issue permits, right? And so you got some counties and some sheriffs that were like, yeah, sure, no problem, just do this, do that, sign this, pay your money, here's your permit, right? Versus other counties where it's virtually impossible to get a concealed carry permit in California. So the question is, though, back in, when was this? June or July of this year, the state of California launched a new website aimed at giving the public access to data about criminal justice, including how many Californians had concealed weapons permits. But very quickly, people discovered that they didn't just release a number of people that had permits, but also release those people's names and addresses and other confidential, personally critical information. Oh, what a flop. What a major, major flop. So apparently last week, the state attorney general's office released a 61-page report on the data breach investigation, which concluded it was caused by the errors of the ill-trained technician who operated the website, compounded by managerial failure to double-check its integrity. You know what this says to me, Matthew, is it's all a failure of state of California leadership. It's all a failure of state attorney general Rob Bonta and his office. Why? Because somebody somewhere said, you know what, we're going to put all this information out on a website. Well, who's going to do that? You, good sir, you're going to do that. So somebody is given the task, here, put this information on a website. And then nobody fails to actually oversee that properly as far as how that's done and how it's done in a way that protected people's privacy, right? Mm-hmm. So so the summary of the report is leadership failed massively in allowing people's confidential private information to be released publicly. People that have permits, people that own guns, and yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Big time problem. I
I
mean, how would
mean,
you feel? I mean, folks. Tell you what, podcast listeners, if you are a California resident and you have been impacted by this, I'd love to hear from you. You can always email us at podcast@concealedcarry.com. I'd love to hear from you. If you were impacted as a result of this major data breach, I'd love to hear from you. Please send me an email. Let us hear from you, your perspective on this. But I can't even imagine. Like if I'm trying to put myself in your shoes, you Californians' shoes, of what that would feel like. I'm pretty careful. I don't really talk to my neighbors very much about what I do. I don't talk much. Like, there's a whole next door app, right? Like I'm on there because I like to pay attention to what's going on in my neighborhood and what people are talking about. And I always have to hold myself back because people will talk about personal or home security type things. And I want to like chime in and be like, yeah, don't do that. Or, oh, this would be a good idea to do. Like, I don't want to be known as the guy in my neighborhood that knows this stuff and has the guns and all that. Right. Like, I'm pretty careful about that sort of thing. Personal security, right? PerSec.
hmm.
And I would be absolutely mortified if my personal information, letting the whole world know that I have concealed carry. I mean, obviously people know me as a somewhat public figure, but to just put it out there so that any Joe, Jane, whoever could download a database with my name, with my address, with my birth date and whatever else, and the fact that I have a permit and the fact that I have a gun, and this is where you can find me at, like, that would be terrifying.
Yeah, it's terrible. I mean, think about this. Think about you jump through all the hoops that California requires, to get a concealed carry license to protect yourself from an X, and you've moved, you've changed your phone number, you've changed addresses because they're a threat to you, and now your name pops up with your address and all this stuff, and so this is terrible. And it says the report showed that confidential personal data was downloaded approximately 2,734 times in full or in part across 507 unique IP addresses, adding the investigation could not accurately determine the number of public visitors who may have only viewed but did not download the underlying data set. I mean, this is really unfortunate, and it shows that there is no accountability. Like this is what they say: ill-trained technician, right? Compounded by managerial failure to double check its integrity. Sorry, guys. I mean, and the problem is I don't even know if people would even know that their data, who has their data, right? Like if I have a concealed carry license in California, I'm sure the DOJ probably sent a letter to all permit holders saying, "Oh, your information was possibly leaked in a data breach, and we apologize for that." But we don't even know
here's
who
one
has
free
it.
year. Here's one free year of what do they call that? Not credit monitoring, but personal. I don't know, whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, LifeLock,
yeah,
whatever.
right. I guess that is kind of credit monitoring and all that, but yeah. Uh,
Yeah, it's just, I mean, you wouldn't even know who has now. It would be different if they came out and said, "Hey, we know we tracked these IP addresses. We know who had it." But they don't know. They're not going to do that, and so this information's out there, and hopefully nothing bad comes from it. But it's just an example of why these types of databases and these types of things, it happens all the time. I mean,
mhm.
it happens all the time.
Yep.
So I don't know.
So, the amazing thing is that and this happens quite often when on the podcast, where we'll talk about one thing and it circles back around and relates to something else in the podcast. But talking about that part of the Oregon ballot measure where they're going to create a state registry of firearms, firearm ownership, firearms purchases. uh, Oregon, take note. of this major personal security, personal privacy failure in the state of California. And by golly, I mean, and in Oregon, they're trying to rush through this process of bringing this whole system up online, right? Like that just begs for a major failure to occur also in the state of Oregon. The problem here with something like this, Matthew, and you know this, is that I mean, it's downloaded, like you said, like 2,700 times. It once it's out there, it's out there. Like that
Hmm.
information is somewhere out there.
Hmm.
Uh, I would be seriously looking at trying to move or something. I don't know. That's just crazy, man. Crazy. And again, I just find it comical that there's even any mention of an ill-trained technician. By golly, don't blame this technician. Okay. Unless he was or she was told specifically this don't do, or don't release this, and like they completely disregarded their instructions. But still, at the end of the day, don't blame them. Turn it on yourselves and blame yourselves for your failure in leadership and management and for allowing this to occur.
Yeah.
Something like that that's that critical should be double checked and triple checked and cross checked and made sure that before it goes live, somebody with authority has reviewed it. I mean, it's kind of how we operate within our small little business. Before we,
Yep.
I mean, we, there's stuff that gets out sometimes. I'm talking about like, whether it's an article or a video that's get published, on our site that we're like, oh shoot, wish we'd caught that, it's a spelling error or whatever, but all the time, like stuff gets thrown across my desk and I'm, reviewing it for that very reason. Like, hey, before we put this out there, we want to make sure it's right.
Yep.
It's not that hard. And it's essential for a state level government releasing what could be private information.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on here. Let's see. Now we get to kind of a follow up to another story. We've talked about this before. We've probably talked about. I feel like we've talked about it more than once, Matthew. Actually, in the past,
Probably. Yeah.
on the website guns.news, a story called "Democrats Want to Use Banks to Squelch Gun Purchases Like They Used Social Media to Silence Political Opponents." This is interesting and timely because of everything that's coming out and that we're starting to learn about suppression of First Amendment speech or free speech on social media, and that there appears to have been collusion. There's certainly some evidence that points that way, that Elon Musk and has been releasing from Twitter, of collusion between government officials and social media giants to suppress free speech. And well, it should be no surprise to us at all that certain government people, legislators would, and I'm sure even the White House themselves would love to use the banking system to control the Second Amendment as well. We've talked about it before. We've talked about things that have been proposed and have been talked about. We've talked about the potential failures and concerns about that stuff. And so this is really just a follow up. And I thought it was a really important follow up because as there are senators and representatives in the government that would love to continue to push this forward and make this a thing, fortunately, at least one major payment network, okay, Visa, for instance, says here that and I'm just quoting here from this article here, says Visa has stated it doesn't have access to data showing the products consumers are actually buying. This means the network and its banking partners would have no idea if a gun store customer is purchasing an automatic rifle or safety equipment. And Matthew, I seem to recall, I think we even brought something like that up the last time we talked about this story of trying to use coding on purchases, electronic purchases made to track firearm related purchases. And I feel like I could be misremembering, but I swear we brought the point of how are they going to know if I go to, Sportsman's Warehouse, right?
Hmm.
And I spend $500. How do they know that $500 is on a gun, or I bought a bunch of iPro, Ear Pro, and like camping equipment?
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, and there, I mean, there's obviously right now practical limitations on what something like Visa can track, and they've basically said it. At least that's what Visa is saying, right? Like, who knows if they can? They have the ability, or are working on the ability. I'm sure that eventually they will. I mean, PayPal does it, right? They know pretty much basic, what you're buying, but this is concerning. If you think about this and just pause it for a moment, and there's a huge shift to electronic currency. Most
Mhm.
transactions are done online, or through credit card transactions. And so if you went that last step to just kind of eliminate paper currency, and I'm not like conspiracy theorist over here and all this, I'm just saying, if we go to a complete electronic currency, I'm pretty sure the infrastructure would be there shortly after to track exactly what you're buying and make sure you pay the government every tax cent on everything you purchase, and all. So this is maybe the
Yeah,
way the future goes.
I
Unfortunately.
agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. I mean, on the one hand, yeah, it's nice and convenient that I can uh, swipe my credit card or even tap and pay with my phone. Like that's pretty cool. But the more and more electronic we become with that, you're absolutely right. There is a risk that even greater control over us as people, as at that point, perhaps no longer free people, but as subjects of the government, that what we buy is tracked, and that definitely that infrastructure. I'd say that infrastructure is already there
Yeah.
to a large extent, right? And that
Yeah.
is kind of scary when you really think about it.
Yeah.
So anyway, something to think about and be aware of, at least that there is some reasonable things coming out of some of these banks and institutions and payment networks like Visa saying, "Well, hold up, guys, this may not work the way you think it's going to work.
Mhm.
How are we going to know what exactly is on that list of items on a receipt?" Right at the end of
Right.
the day, because yeah, gun shops do sell more than just guns and ammo. So
Yep.
definitely worthwhile to consider and think a little bit more thoroughly through such policy. And of course, we're not advocating for any such policy, but anyway. All right, gundigest.com. All right, this brings us to what sort of inspired the title of this episode today, Smith & Wesson's Big Mistake. So I saw recently, it's like a week or so ago, maybe it's been 2 weeks, Smith & Wesson announced a new pistol. Okay. Now, earlier this year, they announced, it was like back in August or September, they released their Metal Series M&P pistols. This is just like their M&P M2.0 pistols, which have been polymer framed since the beginning, but they now released them in an aluminum frame. Well, 2 weeks ago, they released this new competitor version. It's called the M&P9 M2.0 Competitor. And at first I saw it, like on the surface, I was like, oh, this is cool. This is good. Maybe another player in that space that has been dominated by, guns like the Smith & Wesson, or not the Sig Sauer P320 X5 Legion, which is the number one pistol in carry optics competition in USPSA. Um, Also other companies coming on real strong in recent history. Canik with their new competition focused pistol, the Rival, which is designed in part with input from the reigning 4-time, I think, that or 5-time champ this year, Nils Johnson. Also, Beretta has been coming on real strong in the last year or two with their M9 based, or Beretta 92 based pistols, uh, that are a lot more competition friendly, and you're seeing a lot more competitors starting to use the Berettas again in competition shooting. So it's like cool. On the surface, I saw this new pistol from Smith & Wesson and thought, great, another player. I love choices. I love freedom. I love people being able to have good choices to choose from, and then run their chosen equipment in competition. Okay.
But
but like, yeah, the big but. Uh, the more I started looking at this new M2.0 competitor pistol, the more it got worse for me. And I'm struggling to understand like who at Smith and Wesson is calling the shots on some of this stuff. Okay, because basically the only thing I could see that this pistol would be suitable for as a competition pistol would be in outlaw 3-gun, because I don't even know that it would work well in USPSA multi-gun and from a equipment standpoint. So here's the thing: the new pistol has the metal aluminum frame. Okay, just like the metal series that were released earlier this year. It's got a 5-inch barrel. The barrel or the slide's got some slide cuts in it. Like that's all the rage these days. It does have some full height slide serrations on the front portion of the slide, which SIG or geez, sorry, earlier I mixed Smith & Wesson for SIG, and now I'm mixing SIG for Smith & Wesson. But anyway, Smith & Wesson has been, they haven't really put forward cocking serrations on their slides much in the past. They give you those little tiny ones, but so this has got full height cocking serrations in the front. It's got a magwell. Okay, fine, great. It's got their supposed improved M2.0 trigger. It's got an optics cut, and it's got sights, of course. Well, but let's break this down in a little bit greater detail. First of all, the magwell. I'll start there. We'll go from the bottom to the top, work our way up. If we're talking about competition, which for pistol shooting, USPSA is the biggest pistol shooting, competition in the country. Okay, so that's where most of your pistol shooting occurs at. Magwells are only permitted in open and limited divisions, or limited 10, I suppose, too, but nobody really cares about limited 10. So are you going to shoot this gun in open division? No, it's not an open gun. Are you going to shoot it in limited division? Unless your name starts with Nils and ends with Jonathan, no, because most competitors in limited division are shooting with 40 caliber guns, and this is a 9. Now, you probably could convert this to a 40 relatively easy, since 40 caliber barrels do already exist from Smith & Wesson. So that's certainly a possibility, but it's still not an ideal limited division gun. This would seem to be more in line with what you would expect to use in like carry optics, because it already has an optics cut. But you can't have magwells in carry optics, and you can't have magwells in production division. So it comes with a magwell. All right. I guess, in all fairness, it is removable, and the P320X5 and X5 Legions come with a magwell that almost everybody removes because nobody's using them in magwell permitted divisions. Okay, that's fine. I'll cut them some slack there. Let's look at the frame. It's aluminum frame. All right, that's cool. On the surface, we think metal. Metal's cool. Metal's rigid. Metal's strong. Metal's heavy. Or is it? And this is actually probably the biggest flop, I think, with this pistol. So I was on their website, Matthew, the other night, cruising through, looking at their different pistol options. And I was really curious, what is the advertised weight of this new competitor pistol? And I look it up, and it's like 29.7 ounces. I'm like, that's not very heavy. I'm like, but how does that compare to their polymer framed versions of the same gun, or essentially the same gun? The slide looks a little bit different in the case of these other models, but the closest comparable is their 5-inch versions of the M&P M2.0. Okay, so their 5-inch polymer framed model weighs like 30.2 ounces. So the polymer framed gun weighs more than the metal framed gun, because the metal framed gun's made from aluminum, and aluminum's not that heavy. And ironically, in this case, the polymer itself weighs more than apparently the aluminum. Now, that may or may not be true, and it could be that they actually removed more weight out of the slide on this competitor gun, and that might have attributed to the weight difference. But the point is like, we've seen more of this movement towards heavier pistols for competition because it tames the recoil a little bit. And well, that's not a bad thing when you're trying to go max speed in a USPSA practical pistol stage. Now, to be fair, not to talk only about USPSA, IDPA, you could shoot this gun in carry optics using the magwell. It'd probably fit in there pretty well. But here's another knock I'm going to give on it: the sights. The sights are not competition-oriented sights. It's got what looks like the high vis combination. It doesn't say it's got the tritium ones, at least that I could find, but the sights look like the same sight that high vis makes, that has a fiber optic insert, and a lot of times they have also the tritium in them as well. But either way, this is a big, fat, wide front sight, which almost no serious competitor wants to use. We usually want a wider rear notch and a narrower front sight. And that's another thing. A lot of competition pistols that you see have adjustable rear sights. This one does not. So I saw this, and again, at first I'm like, oh, this is new and exciting. But the more I looked, the more I went, why'd they do that? Oh, why'd they do that? That's dumb. And so that's why I called this Smith & Wesson's big mistake. I think it's going to be a big flop. They'll probably sell a few. There'll probably be a few folks out there that use them in competition, and that's fine. But it's not going to take over the world by storm, similar to the way the X5 Legions have, or even the way the Canics and the Berettas are coming on really strong right now. It just won't, because it doesn't fit cleanly in any divisions. And one of the big benefits of using the X5 Legion or the Canic Rival or some of the new guns from Beretta is you can buy them and run them effectively in competition right out of the box without changing a thing. And if I bought this gun, I'd probably change some stuff before I actually could run it in competition, and that cost me money and cost me time.
Yeah. Well, and the worst thing about it, and I know you notice this, Riley, because this is something that you always pick out, is the lack of grip texturing. That's your thing. I'm surprised.
I left it off. I left it off.
Why? I mean, you listed everything else.
Okay, so it's funny you said that, because somebody was actually talking about, it was actually Donovan Moore, who is well known. He's a very, very high level shooter, and is also, his training company is called Point One Tactics. He's a multiple black belt patch recipient from Scott Jelinski. Donovan Moore is a serious shooter, and he shoots M&P pistols. He did a YouTube video about this, and he basically just railed on this new gun. He's like, guys, don't buy it, because this gun is overpriced, and you can get just as good a gun by, like, you can go find a MMP M2.0 for like $400 if you really are, shop smartly and look around. You'll find one for like $400, and you'll be already light years ahead in terms of your monetary investment, that if you go and spend whatever this thing, I think it was like $999 is its MSRP. So street price probably like, I don't know, $850, $900. But his whole point was, this is just a real slick marketing gimmick, and you're overpaying for it if you buy one. Or if you just want to look cool and have the latest, coolest gadget, that's fine too, I guess, But so I thought that was interesting, coming from a guy that is a huge M&P fan, because that's what he shoots, and he shoots very, very, very well. But he's not keen on this either. And his comment about the grip texture was, well, you get basically the same gun as like a standard M2.0, but less grippy.
You're going the wrong way.
So I don't know. Brian Schuler comments, what are the aluminum frame competition pistols that are accepted by the competitors? Well, so the Beretta pistols, those are aluminum frame. The lower portion of the gun is. You can also run a P320 with the AXG grip module, which is an aluminum grip module, and I've seen a few competitors run those. It's not, it kind of depends on what you want, what you're looking for in terms of grip feel and fit to your hand, and the type of grip texture you want. There's pros and cons to almost everything. I'm a huge fan of the X5 Legion with its tungsten infused polymer grip module that weighs, I'm really happy with a 43.5 ounce gun, which is basically what my competition gun weighs. It's very, very soft shooting, but it's not so heavy I can't transition quickly with it. I frankly would love to see more guns using similar technology with a tungsten infused polymer type technology, but I'm pretty sure SIG patented that. And so you'd have to use it on license from them, and of course that would require SIG agreeing to allow a competitor to use their technology. So I'm a real big fan of that because you get a kind of all the benefits of a steel gun, and that's kind of what people are saying about this new competitor pistol from Smith Wesson is if you want to do it right, make this thing in steel, like Walter did with their competition gun. They came out with the Q5 first, and then a few years later they came out with the Q5 SF or steel frame, which is a fantastic gun. Bit spendy, and that's part of the challenge. Is a steel framed gun is a lot more expensive to make than an aluminum framed gun, and even aluminum and steel are more expensive to make than a polymer framed gun. And that's where I'm really partial to the. I like the way SIG did it with the X5 Legion because it's pretty inexpensive to make. I mean, that's not an inexpensive gun either, but you can find them if you shop around. You can find an X5 Legion for like low sevens, 750. That's honestly a really solid buy for a truly like competition ready gun, in my opinion. But anyway, good questions there. All right, so we're running out of time. We still got to do a couple reviews. Matthew, why don't you go first? Tell us what are you reviewing for us today?
So I'll just go. I'm actually working on the review for this product, but I'll give you guys a little sneak peek. I'm trying out some stuff from a company called CCW Breakaways. I'm not going to hold up on the camera because there's not much to see. But they have a system of clothing, pants, and shorts for people that carry pocket carry, and basically, the pockets have some material inside that helps. Keep the holster put inside, and in place as you draw the firearm in. And the breakaway portion of it is as you reach into the pocket, it opens up. There's some snap systems that you don't see. They're kind of hidden, and as your hand goes in, it kind of opens up the pocket, which facilitates an easier an easier draw coming out of the pocket, less chance of snagging and that type of thing. So I'm working on that. So far, if you like pocket carrying, if you pocket carry, you might want to check out the review probably sometime next week or something like that, maybe after Christmas. But yeah, I've been using it actually with a P365, and I'm a small dude. My pockets aren't big on my pants, but I've actually been testing this out with pocket carrying a P365, and so it's worked. So yeah, so check it out or be tuned in for the full review of exactly what I think about a couple different products from CCW Breakaways, but their main product is their line of pants and shorts that have that breakaway pocket.
Yeah, cool. Right on, dude. That's interesting. I've been aware of that product for a while, and yeah, I don't know if I'm glad you're the one reviewing it. I don't particularly have a personal desire. It doesn't fit any purpose for me personally, but I love to hear what you come away with it. So
yeah, I don't pocket carry, but I know a lot of people do, and so if this is an to test it out and see if this is a option for people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who like that.
Yeah, cool. Hey, one quick correction. I think I mentioned just a minute ago in response to Brian's question about aluminum frame pistols. There are Beretta pistols that are aluminum framed, but their newest competition focused ones, I did confirm they are steel frame. By that, they're 92X performance pistols. They have the 92X performance, 92X performance carry optic pistol. Those are very much geared towards the competition market, and those do actually come with a steel frame. But a lot of the other Beretta 92s are made with aluminum frames, and you could certainly run one of the aluminum framed ones in competition. But that steel frame give you a little bit more weight and probably be a little bit softer to shoot. So anyway, just wanted to make sure I clarified that because I did misspeak on that. My review today is on the Hunter's HD Gold WX or Wiley X framed. See that? Hunter's HD Gold lenses, but in the WX Valor frames. So Hunter's HD Gold been around for a few years. In all full disclosure, I am sponsored by Hunter's HD Gold, and I'm very appreciative to Brian Conley over there at Hunter's HD Gold and his team, and for the amazing products that they create. But for a number of years, they had a great product, and here's my first set of glasses right here that I got from Hunter's HD Gold. I can't remember what these ones are called. I apologize, Brian, if you happen to be listening to this. But these are great glasses. They protect your eyes really well. They wrap around the face. The frames and lenses are rated ballistically, so you know that you're properly protected when shooting. When shooting steel, especially, it's really important, or just shooting in general. These are great protective glasses, but they don't necessarily look the sexiest, you know. And a while back, Brian started partnering with other companies and getting a hold of their frames, like Wiley X, and I know that they've done some Oakleys and some other things like that. But you can go right on Hunter's HD Gold website right now and buy this ready to go, ship right to your house, no wait. I mean, from the time I ordered these to the time they showed up at my doorstep was like 6 days or something, which is awesome. A much better, more stylish looking pair of glasses. I went with these because I liked the way they looked, and they are open framed across the bottom, so I don't feel like I'm as boxed in as I am when I'm wearing these ones, which are full framed, and just looking for something different. So I picked these up. Hunter's HD Gold, if you're not familiar, the lenses are this proprietary gold color. They are photochromatic, meaning that they change with the sunlight. So as you go outside, they darken. You come inside, they lighten. And I'll tell you, it's a weird thing. You put these on and wear them for like 2 minutes. It doesn't take long at all. If I start wearing them right now, in a few seconds, really, almost, at first everything's yellow, but then it starts sort of disappearing. Like you just stop noticing that everything's yellow, and it feels natural. So I put these on, wear them actually all the time, and forget I'm wearing them sometimes. I mean, I say wear them all the time. I'll wear them in the shop working on holsters or doing other things to protect my eyes from debris. I wear them when I'm driving, especially for the sunglass. I want them to dim when I'm driving and make it a little bit easier to drive in the bright sunlight. But they still transmit a lot of light, so you can even wear them even in low light conditions. I'll wear them. I've worn these, well, not this specific pair, but I've worn Hunter's HD Gold doing low light classes. No problem. I've worn them driving at night. No problem. In fact, I almost feel like I can see better with them on at night than without them, which is a weird thing. But I'll like go back and forth. I'll be driving and it's it's nighttime and I'm like, put them on, take them off, put them on, take them off. I'm like, I almost feel like it's easier to see with them on. So I don't know what it is about Brian and his unique technology, but these are fantastic glasses. And I know Jared here's commenting that they lost his interest when they wanted the same price for RX lenses as for RX complete glasses. Hunter's HD Gold is not inexpensive. Okay, I'll be straight up with you. These are not inexpensive glasses. I think this pair is like $375. Okay, that's not cheap. But as I'm getting older, I'm realizing a couple things about me. I don't like to go cheap on the pants I wear, the shoes I put on my feet, or the stuff I put on my face, especially when it comes to glasses. And I truly love wearing these glasses. I love wearing them at the range, love wearing them in classes, love wearing them teaching, love wearing them shooting and competing, love wearing them driving. I couldn't be happier. And so that's just my take. I feel like they're worth it. They may not be worth it to you, and that's okay. They're not inexpensive, but they work as advertised. Here's what I notice when I'm shooting with them. I feel like the contrast, and obviously this is a perceived thing, but talking with other people seem to agree. But the contrast of targets and things, it seems to pop more. I can see the targets better. I can see, particularly if I'm looking at like a USPSA target, I could see the perforations in the hit zones better and I could stand there and take it off and and put it on back and forth, and it's very, very noticeable for me and for my eyes that I can see the hit zones on the target much more clearly when I'm wearing the glasses versus other standard protective eyewear. And if you think, well, I'll just get some protective eyeglasses that have yellow lens, they're not the same. I've tested some of the other yellow ones, and they just don't quite pop quite the same way. So there's something to that. There's something special to them. They are expensive. I know that Brian will give you your money back if you're not happy, so you're welcome to try them and see what you think. But anyway, that's my quick review on the Wiley X Valor frames with Hunter's HD Gold lenses. I think they're a winner. I love the styling of these ones, and I love wearing them.
Cool.
So
very cool.
There you go. Well, that brings us to a conclusion of today's episode. I do want to let you know before we go, the next episode that you see in the podcast feed will be a special announcement. We're actually going to do that here momentarily. So those of you that are watching this live, you're going to get a notification from us here in like 5 minutes, maybe 10, of us going live again and recording that special announcement regarding the podcast and some things coming in the future. So we want to let everybody know about that. So stay tuned. I wanted to make you aware of that so that you can look for that special podcast episode announcement. Before we go, a reminder to support our sponsors, silencershop.com and ccwsafe.com. I appreciate your support of them that support us and make it possible to do what we do. And so, Matthew, final words?
Thanks, guys. And like always, it's just a pleasure that you guys listen and makes it all worthwhile for us.
Absolutely. Thank you, brother. So, folks, until next time, a reminder to train right, train often, and train safe so you can fight hard, fight fast, and fight true. Take care.